welcome to Dale Street Evangelical Church online. Hope you're keeping safe and well. A new feature for the website is Meet the Church. So each week Dave will be nominating a different member of our church just to find out a bit more about them. Dave's asked me to start things off. He sent me a list of questions, so I hope you'll find out a bit more about me and enjoy. Family life as a boy. Family life as a boy was really good. I'll start at the beginning. I was born on the 7th of July 1988 in Barking and Dagenham Hospital in East London / Essex. Parents are Nigel and Linda Allen. I had a really good upbringing. I started living in a little one-bed flat, I believe, in Ilford in East London, and then we moved out when I was a little bit older. I think I was 1 or 2, across to North London, where I spent a lot of my time growing up. For a number of years, I was an only child. So for 7 years, I didn't have any brothers or sisters. So it was a lot of one-on-one time with my parents, and my parents always did spend a lot of time with me. They both worked, but they always found the time to play in the garden, play games at home. So yeah, it was really good. But for a long time, I had no brothers or sisters, and I really wanted a brother or sister. So I remember I used to pray every night for a brother or a sister, obviously not knowing how annoying they'd be, but still wanted one. And after 7 years, my brother was born, Samuel. He was born premature, so there were a lot of complications around his birth, but thank God he came through that, and he's healthy and well today. And then 18 months later, I had another little sister, Rebecca. She was premature as well, but only 4 weeks early. A few complications again, but she came through it and is healthy and well today. And then when I was 12, I had another sister, Elspeth, and she again was premature, but only 2 weeks, and she's healthy and well today, which is great. So yeah, busy parents. So yeah, as a child, I was very happy, had a great upbringing. Parents loved us. Even having 4 children, they still had time for all of us, and it was a really happy home. Spent a lot of time going to church and reading the Bible and learning about God from an early age, which was brilliant. And yeah, we were just a very close family, and still are a close family today. So life as a boy growing up was very good. My earliest memory of church is quite a hard one, because I went to church from being a newborn. My parents used to take me from when I was first born. But my earliest memories, I'd probably say, I was probably about 8 or 9 years old. And I remember going to church, and the church I went to was a Brethren church at the time, my parents. And there was myself, my mum, my dad, and my brother, Sam, who was about 3, and Rebecca, who was probably just a few months old. And I remember going to church, quite a small church, not a lot in fellowship there, but let's just say they weren't as accommodating to young children and noise as our church is. Lovely people, but very different 30 years ago. And I remember sitting there when in the morning meeting, everything's nice and quiet, and my brother's sitting on the floor, and he gets a toy out and he starts banging it on the floor repeatedly, and he's slightly out of reach of my mum and my dad, and he's sitting there banging this toy on the floor, and I'm there sniggering, and my mum can't reach him, my dad can't reach him, and I remember my dad just giving me an almighty stare to my mum, and if looks could kill, then yeah, that was probably one of my earliest memories of church, and probably a funny one. Also, I do remember I spent a lot of time with James Moran growing up. We were very close growing up, and we still are now. And I remember going to his church and going to Sunday school there. And John Butterfield, I don't know if he was our Sunday school teacher, but I remember he did give us some lessons while we were at church there, and it was very good. Being big brother in the family was great, mainly because I could boss my brothers and sisters around, but no, it was good. Takes on some responsibility because obviously you are meant to lead by example, being the older one. Not that we always did, but never mind. But no, it was good. With it being such a big age gap between myself and my brothers and sisters, I wasn't really close with them when I was younger. I sort of, in a way, felt like a third parent sometimes. But as we've got older, we have got a lot closer, and all four of us, we are really close now, which is nice. And it's nice to see that even today, they do still come to me for advice and ask me questions, and being older, they want to know, learn from experience. So yeah, they do still maybe not look up to me as much, but they do ask me for advice and ask me things and still come to me, which is great. Just a few months ago, my brother Sam, he was in between moving houses. He'd moved out one house, and the next house he was planning on moving into wasn't quite ready yet, so he stayed at ours for a few weeks and just gave him a helping hand there, which was good. And that's just what family do, what big brothers do. So yeah, I enjoy it, I like it. When I was 10, I had a dream job, and it's still my dream job today. Maybe one day, you never know, but I wanted to be a stunt driver. I love cars, really into my cars, and watching all the films when I was younger, racing around the streets and doing tricks and donuts and skids in cars. That was right up my street, and it still is, and I'd love to do it. I've done a number of track days, which I really love. Quite like speed, which isn't always a good thing, but yeah, dream job would be a stunt driver, and you never know, one day I may get there. My early teens were great. Ever since being a young age, I've always been very sporty. Growing up, I did rugby, football, athletics, martial arts, all kinds of sports. So when I was young teens, played rugby for school, played rugby for Middlesex at county level. I was part of an athletics club. I was part of a swimming club as well. So yeah, very active in my early teens. Really enjoyed sport. Had a lot of friends, had a lot of good friends. And yeah, early teens were very good. Bit later on in my teens, when I was probably about 14, 15, things took a bit of a turn. I was obviously still at school, probably year 9, year 10, and just got in with the wrong crowd. Not in school, but outside of school with other people I'd come to know. And yeah, it was quite a poor, bad time in my life, because I got involved with all sorts of things, which weren't good, weren't legal at the time, well, not legal now. So yeah, it wasn't good, and it got that bad that I actually had to move out of the family home. So I was away from my parents, away from my mum, my dad, brothers and sisters, for a number of years, from age of about 15 to when I was nearly 18. Still saw them, not a lot, but still saw them, but I wasn't able to live in the family home because of the things I was involved with. Not proud of it at all. Something I learnt from, I look back on and I regret. But yeah, those were my later teens, and it took me to when I was about 17, 18 for me to actually realise and to click out of this mode and I was in, and to get away from the people that I was involved with. So yeah, they were my late teens, but I've come out of it, I've learnt from it, and I think everyone has lessons in life and learns from experiences in life and hopefully becomes a better person for it. But yeah, those are my teens. So in a whole, they were good, but there are a few years in my life that I do like to just try and forget about. As I'm not a stunt driver yet, I decided to go down the road of physiotherapy originally. I did work experience when I was, I think, 15, 16 in a physiotherapist clinic, and really enjoyed it. And I thought, right, that's what I want to do. I want to be a physiotherapist. So did my GCSEs, didn't quite get the grades I needed, but still went ahead anyway. Started doing my A-levels to pursue my goal, and then halfway through the first year of my A-levels I dropped out, had a complete change of heart, and decided I wanted to be a plumber. So a lot of my friends at the time laughed at me and said, haha, you're going to be unblocking toilets for the rest of your life. And I said, yeah, that's what I want to do. So yeah, following September I started a full-time course doing plumbing, heating and gas, and the following year I managed to get an apprenticeship with a company in my local area where I lived in Waltham Abbey, and that just set me off with what I'm doing today. So I worked for the company doing my apprenticeship for about 2 years, got to a stage where I was competent and ready to go out, and I wanted to go out and just earn some decent money, because obviously apprenticeship wages aren't great, but I was just being held back a bit with the company I was with. So I decided to leave where I was, and I went to work for a guy called D. Murphy. Worked for his company for about a year, and his workload, he lost some contracts and his workload really reduced, so he had to get rid of some staff, but he kept me on, even though I was the last to go in. He still kept me on, obviously saw some potential there, and he said, look, I want to keep hold of you. So I carried on working for him, and then his workload reduced even more, and said, look, I can't keep it any longer, but what I can do is I can help you set up yourself, set up as your own company, set your own company up, and when I've got the work from you, I can give you the work, and the rest of the time you can find your own work. So I thought, yeah, that'd be great. So coming up 11 years ago now, I set up my company, Plumbing, Heating and Gas Services, and yeah, it's from day one it's grown and grown, which has been brilliant. Mainly based in London, working across London, providing services down there, but also do work up in Yorkshire as well, which is good. And I've got people that work for me, and yeah, it really is a dream come true, and to work for yourself is brilliant, and I really enjoy it. One thing you may not know is a few years ago I actually applied for one of my other dream jobs, which I didn't tell you about, which was a fireman. I actually wanted to be a fireman as well growing up, and I went for the first phase of getting into the fire brigade, London Fire Brigade, and I passed the first exam. So I went back for the second exam, went to the second exam, passed that as well, and then there were 3 more stages left. There was another exam, there was an interview, and then the physical. So I went for the third exam, got through that. I thought, absolutely brilliant. Just have to get through the next 2 stages, and I'm in. Got through to the interview stage and didn't pass. So unfortunately, didn't become a fireman, but still doing the plumbing and heating, which is great. This is going to sound really bad, but I actually can't remember. No, I've got a good reason for that. I think I was about 1, maybe 2 when Hannah and I first met. So growing up, I knew Hannah, our parents knew each other, going to obviously Yorkshire Christian camp. We both went, so we both knew each other. But growing up, we weren't close growing up. We probably weren't even friends, we just knew of each other. And it wasn't until years later, in 2011, I'd just come out of a relationship. Hannah had come out of a relationship at the same time, and I was unaware of this, but Hannah's close friend was Caroline Moran, who's obviously James's wife, and obviously I'm close with James, and I remember James talking to me and James saying, oh, Hannah Moody, she's recently split up with her boyfriend, maybe should try and talk to her. And at the time I wasn't interested in women at all. I just wanted to have a bit of time alone, single, spend a bit of time with Morgan. But yeah, Hannah ended up sending me a message on Facebook back then, and we got talking, and a few weeks after that I went up to James's to see him and see the family because I'd seen him in a while, and Caroline had invited Hannah around as well. So yeah, it was actually James and Caroline that got Hannah and I together, so thanks guys, thanks for that. And yeah, that's when we first met years later, and we got talking, got on really well, and yeah, happy man. I grew up going to church, so all my life I've been going to church, learning stories of the Bible in Sunday school, learning the Bible and learning about Jesus at home through my parents and through other family members as well. And I've always, from a young age, I've known about Jesus, and I've known about his sacrifice that he gave for us. And for a few years I was quite rebellious to it, because I knew I was sinful, I knew I needed to be saved, but I never did anything about it. I don't know what part of me it was that said, no Matt, you don't need Jesus in your life, but I didn't choose to follow Jesus and take him as my saviour for the first few years of my life, even though I knew, and I knew what it meant to be a Christian. I remember when I was about 8 years old, my dad talking to me about it and saying, if you understand and you want to be saved, then obviously this is what you need to do. And even still, I knew what I needed to do, and I just didn't do it. Why? I don't know. But yeah, I was a bit older when I was about 13 years old, 12, 13 years old. I remember going away with a boys group that I was part of another church which I used to go to sometimes with my parents, which was close by to our church. They did a boys class on a Monday night, so a group of lads used to get together, used to do a Bible study, have some food, have a laugh. At the weekends we used to sometimes go out and play football, and yeah, it was brilliant. And we went away for a weekend, and I remember my parents dropping me off and we were staying in this big house. I can't remember exactly where it was, but we were staying in this big massive house, and all the guys were there and some of the leaders as well. My parents dropped me off and they were leaving, and I really didn't want to stay, at all. And I remember crying from not to go, but they left anyway, left me there, as good parents do. And yeah, I had a great weekend there. But it was that weekend, there wasn't anything specific that had happened, but I think it was just my own personal realisation that, Matt, what have you been doing for the last few years? You've known you need to be saved, you know Jesus loves you. Why haven't you given your heart and your life to Christ? So it was actually that weekend when I became a Christian. And I remember where I was sat high up on these rocks, on these big hill, looking out over the beach and over the sea, and just giving my heart to the Lord. And yeah, it was a really good time. My faith outside of church has helped me honestly beyond description. Having faith in God and having faith in Jesus is an amazing thing. Just to give you just a few examples, when I was a lot younger, when my brother was first born, he was premature. He was 12 weeks early, and there were times when he was first born where he may not have made it through the night, and I don't remember it exactly, but I remember my parents talking to me and saying to me that there was a point where the doctors came in and said, look, Sam's not going to make it through the night, obviously you need to prepare yourself for the worst. I remember them talking to me about it, and I remember praying about it. I was only 7 at the time, but I still prayed, and my parents prayed, and I know a lot of people prayed, and obviously Sam came through the night and rapidly improved, and the doctors were just overwhelmed with what had happened, because it was almost impossible for him to survive, but he still survived, with the grace of God. So yeah, that's probably the very earliest memory of me seeing my faith and God work in my life and in our lives. But since then, even though I haven't always been walking with the Lord, even though I may have been away from him at times, I have always known in the back of my mind what is right and what I should be doing, and I have been faithful to him, even though we don't always live perfect lives. I have been faithful, and even with meeting Hannah, after I split up with my previous partners, I couldn't see a way I would get to where I wanted to be, with a happy family and a happy life, and with an amazing wife and with children and with the things I have now. But God has provided me with those things better than I ever could have imagined. I've got an amazing family. The children I've got, the wife I've got, they really are amazing, and I truly thank God for that. And that is a result of, I believe, me being faithful to God. I don't have one particular verse that is just my favourite. There's quite a few verses I like, but one verse that sticks out in my mind is Jeremiah 29 verse 11 and 12, and reason for that is because I was at a time in my life where not sure where things were going, struggling a little bit, and when I was reading, I used to read off an iPad, and on the iPad, on this app that I had, it gave a verse of the day, and this verse just popped up, and it was just the perfect timing for this verse, because it really encouraged me, and from then on I did read it every single day just to encourage me. So Jeremiah 29 verse 11 and 12 says this: "For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. They are plans for good and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope. In those days when you pray, I will listen."